There you go. Okay. So on to administrative business. The approval of the draft minutes, the full authority meeting March 20th, 2019. Oh, okay. We have some amendments. Moved by member Wright, seconded by member Height. I think so. Steele, sorry, member Steele. That the full authority minutes of March 20th be amended to reflect a deferral of resolution FA-822-19 and that the word withdraw be removed from resolution FA-83-2019. All those in favor? Is there any opposed? So I guess that's carried. And the next motion, moved by member Height, seconded by member Foster, that the following meeting minutes be adopted. Full authority meeting minutes dated March the 20th, 2019 as amended, and full authority closed session meeting minutes dated March the 20th, 2019 to remain private and confidential. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? And that also is carried. Okay, is there any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, there's correspondence. Are there any comments or discussion from the correspondence items? Member Johnson?
Thank you. The 4.3, this is a notice from the City of Hamilton asking for a completed update about the reserves. I'm just asking that we direct staff to do so. We just had our financial statement given to us. I can't see it not being a problem, just photocopying and sending it off.
Yes, absolutely, Madam Chair. Through you, we would be pleased to do that. Once we sign also the draft, or now the approved audited financial statement, that will be distributed to all of our partners and the provincial governments. So I believe we had acted on sending the reserves to the City of Hamilton, but we would be pleased to send them the entire package.
Member Height?
Yes, as long as you're sending it to City of Hamilton. I'd like a copy of the reserves as well, please.
So perhaps we could forward to the entire board. They are part of the financial package, Member Height. Oh, you want it separate? Okay. Are there any other discussion? No other discussion? Then I have a motion moved by Member Foster, seconded by Member Steele, that the following correspondence be received for information. Email from the City of Hamilton dated March 2019, Conservation Authority Reserves, Environmental Registry Posting, Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks dated April the 5th, 2019, Modernizing Conservation Authorities Operations, excuse me, Conservation Authorities Act, and Environmental Registry Posting, Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks dated April 5th, 2019, refocusing Conservation Authority development permits on the protection of people and property. Member Johnson?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to know, and I'm getting confused with the number system here, so just bear with me. So I'd like to ask our CAO to comment on the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry's grant allocation to the NPCA. My understanding is in the past we've been given $180,000. They've reduced it by 50%. We've received this amount since 1996, and all of a sudden now, was this something you knew ahead of time?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am extremely pleased that you've raised that question, Councillor or Member Johnson. Oh, damn. Sorry.
That usually happens to me.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, and then put it in your pocket.
My apologies.
That's okay. I just saw everybody reach for their phones too, so I have a feeling they.
I am so sorry about that.
Yeah.
I just want to give you a very brief history because I think it's extremely important for the board members to be aware that in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, we used to get at least 50 cents on the dollar for our entire program from the province of Ontario. So if our budget was $11 million, as it is this year, up until the early 1990s, probably 50% of that was paid by the province. In 1996, the then provincial government eliminated all of our capital budgeting. It was gone. And they cut back all of what we call as our transfer payments, which is the payment that each conservation authority gets every year to do certain work. Our transfer payments up until recently were $174,000 a year from the province out of an $11 million budget. So we got a little bit more for source water protection. I don't want to negate that. But in our total operations, we received $174,000 of a $11 million budget from the province. As you all are extremely aware, the province came down with their provincial budget last Thursday, and there were a number of cuts, including to conservation authorities. So every conservation authority in the province got their transfer payment cut again. So everybody was reduced by 50%. So our transfer payment that was around $174,900 was cut in half. And we now, mid-budget year for us. It's not like we could prepare for it in 2020. So we now have, rather than $174,900, they actually gave us a little bit more than 50%, and we have $90,000 this year. We can accommodate that in our budget, luckily, due to a number of staffing gaps and a number of other efficiencies that have been gained in the budget this year. We won't go into a deficit over that loss, but certainly it will have an impact next year as we move forward to 2020. I would also just indicate that Conservation Ontario and the Vice Chair and Chair are aware of this, have been responding to this initiative. We don't think we'll be overly successful in getting any money back, but the problem is that the province wants us to deliver on what they consider core mandate, which is floodplain management and regulations, yet that's the exact pot of money that they're reducing from us. And we all know that that means that they will want the municipalities to pick up that responsibility, which makes our budgeting for 2020 extremely challenging because everybody's been faced with cuts. So thank you, Member Johnson, for bringing that up. And I'm sorry if I didn't address your question completely.
You absolutely did. In fact, it's a segue into what I was just going to request. So this is another downloading. This is what they've been doing for now 20 some odd years. The Band-Aid solution this year, that's good to know, but it's just a Band-Aid solution. And I appreciate what Conservation Ontario is doing, but I also believe that maybe this board should be sending a letter to each of our municipalities asking for endorsement to go after not only Conservation Ontario, but also send it through AMO and directly to the minister. So if we could direct staff, please, to create a letter for the board to endorse, to send to our 3 municipalities, to get them to forward that further on, because it will end up being back on our taxes at budget time. They're going to come and say, we're now downloaded another 100,000 folks, so guess who's going to pay the bill? So if we can do that, that would be great. I don't know formally wise how you want to handle that, but we want to empower the staff to send these to our municipalities so that we can now pick up the fight and go forward.
So we can receive that as staff direction. Member Steele?
Thank you, and thank you to Member Johnson. I agree. But in that, make sure in that you outline the money that they're not giving us and what we've used it in the past for. so that we show that it was used for our core reasoning of getting the money, as the CAO has said, so that, we're not cutting out a fun activity that we use the money for. It was used for core reasons why that money was being sent by the province. So as long as we include that and how we used that money in the past, and that we will continue to use the 90,082, 86 in there, but this is the reality that they are cutting our core services. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Member Steele. Yes, I failed to mention that we do get our transfer payments. This particular pot of money, it is restricted in how we can spend it. We can't spend it on lands. We can't spend it on corporate services. We must spend it on the delivery of core mandate, which is our floodplain management comments under the Planning Act to you and your municipalities, and our regulations.
Would anyone else like to comment, or no other discussion? All right, so back to the motion. I guess at this point we can vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? And that's carried. Okay. So motion moved by Member Height, seconded by Member Foster, that the tabled correspondence from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry dated April the 12th, 2019, regarding notification of 2019-2020 transfer payment funding be received. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's also carried. Okay, Chairman's remarks. That's me today. So one thing that I wanted to just bring up is that we did meet, the Conservation Ontario held its annual meeting on April the 1st. The chair, the interim CAO, and myself attended. There were 36 conservation authorities represented, and many of them were in attendance. There was an orientation presented and completed at the meeting for new chairs and vice chairs. The York Regional Chair, Wayne Emerson, was appointed as the Chair of Conservation Ontario for 2019, and many updates and reports were considered. However, two key reports addressed the provincial government's review of the Client Service and Streamline Initiative regarding conservation authorities and modernizing conservation authorities' operations review of core mandate. These two initiatives are referred to under correspondence in the April 17th agenda package. Please. The other thing I wanted to mention was at one point they asked for a vote on something, and Chair Billsma put up his hand, and the chair made a comment that, oh, there's a new face, and Dave proudly exclaimed, "Niagara's back," at which point everyone cheered. So I just want to let you know everyone was very happy to see Niagara represented, and that we had new people at the table, and they were very encouraged, especially to see Gail there. So they were very happy that we were all there, and it was a very positive environment. So we're looking forward to continuing participation at that level, and I would encourage you to spread the good word about the new NPCA and the good work we're doing, and our members, because you guys are making a big difference to this organization, and we're very proud of it. And at this point, I will pass it over for the Chief Administrative Officer's comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too will be brief. The last month, further to your direction at the March 20th meeting, I've been spending a good deal of my time meeting with staff, getting their insights on the organizational structure, and we are looking very forward today to presenting to you in closed session some of our observations, our comments, and our recommendations to you on realignment. It's really given me an opportunity, and I want to thank there's a number of staff here right now, but it's given me an incredible opportunity to sit down with a number of staff one-on-one and hear from them and hear some of their perceptions on the last number of years in the organization. Item number 2, and my final point, Madam Chair, is it's extremely important for everyone to know that our May meeting date and location are changing. It's changing to accommodate the Auditor General coming and presenting her recommendations to the board. I wanted to alert this because I know a number of board members will probably have the May regularly scheduled meeting in their calendar. The May meeting now will be May 3rd. There'll most likely be a 2-hour session with the Auditor General. She's very pleased to come and meet with you. She's been pleased that she's been invited to attend our meeting. Staff will accompany her presentation by an update on all the work that we've been doing to meet the Auditor General's recommendations. I'm delighted, Madam Chair, I must say that we've made a lot of movement on her recommendations. The other thing is because the meeting date has changed, we need to change the location. This facility is booked for May 3rd. So if I could just quickly turn it over to the clerk, we will send you out a notice and we'll put it in our website in big bold letters, but if you could just mention, Mr. Clerk, where the meeting will be.
It's going to be in Fonthill at the Meridian Center, and it's 100 Meridian Way, I believe.
It's at the new arena in Font Hill, in Pelham. The Meridian Center in, it's in Font Hill, 100 Meridian Way. Can't miss it. It's on Highway 20. Pelham, the wonderful town of Pelham.
So thank you, Madam Chair. As I said, we will be getting lots of notice out on the meeting date change on our website because we know our citizens follow that, and we'll be giving you lots of updates on a meeting date change and location change. Thank you for that.
And of course, that's a public meeting, so the public are more than welcome to attend, spread the word among other people who may be interested in attending as well. So, for our business for information, we will be receiving all of the reports together unless any members would like to lift any for discussion. So at this point, I'd like to ask if there's any items in Section 5, Business for Information, that would like to be discussed. Member Height.
5.1, please. I'd like lifted to ask some questions.
5.1, are there any other items?
Do you want me to speak to that? Okay.
Okay.
At the end of the last term, I know that the councillor who was chair of the Conservation Authority at the time, Councillor Annunziata from Fort Erie, was somewhat adamant about staying on the board until a new legal board was put in place. If you look at the Watershed Management Status Report, page 1, it's somewhat shocking that the town of Fort Erie would have 20% of all the applications for the first 3 months going through for the town of Fort Erie, where the town of Fort Erie, if you look at Niagara Falls, Welland, and St. Catharines in total, just about total what Fort Erie did, it concerns me as if maybe they were being pushed through while he was still chair, and I don't know if that's a fact or not. I'd love to see what applications went through, were they vetted properly. I'm concerned when I see that kind of a normality in a chart like this or in a report showing numbers like that. I don't know if staff want to answer that or can answer that today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My apologies. I will certainly tackle the first part of it, and then I think our Director of Watershed Management would add on to it, and we can certainly investigate that further if the board wishes. I do want to just observe that when I looked at the statistics, I was surprised at the volume coming from Fort Erie. So there is a lot of work being done in Fort Erie right now compared to other municipalities. My perception in talking to the Director of Watershed Management was there was no influence in terms of moving any of those permits or applications through, but I'll let the Director, if I may, Madam Chair, speak to that issue himself.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. These ones wouldn't, these are for the Q1. So these are January since with the new board in place and
Well, I understand that, but they would have been put in motion with the previous board, I'm assuming,
Not-
through the,
No,
that's
not
what I
necess-
was looking at, assuming that they might have been.
no, that what I can do for those for the planning and permitting aspects, we can go back, take a look when those applications came in, and I can provide that back to you. I'm not sure if you want it as a report or just an email or.
I don't know if you want me to respond. I just want to make sure it was done, thoroughly vetted, and it wasn't pushed through, initiated back in November, December, when the former chair was still involved with the Conservation Authority. Then it takes a month or 2 or 3 to process, and that's what we're looking at, what was processed and began prior to us being here. I want to make sure it was done properly, that's all.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. We can certainly go back into our files. We keep detailed files and take a look at whether there's any documentation on file as to whether there has been any board dialogue with the staff in relation to those applications.
And some of the reasons I'm bringing that up is I had heard, and I don't know if this is factual, but I had heard that prior board members, prior to this board, were around the board office a great deal and were maybe doing too much with initial staff instead of going through the board. And that concerns me. We should be given direction. We should be dealing with policy. We shouldn't be dealing with day-to-day work. We shouldn't be micromanaging. And my concern was, and rumors had come out to me, that there was a lot of micromanaging going on with some of the members of the previous board.
Mr. Chair, through you to Member Height.
And bullying, as a board member reminded me.
Through the chair, Member Height, I think your perception is a correct one. And we will be chatting a little bit further about just an example or so of that later today. There is no doubt, and I do believe that that was an observation that the Auditor General made very clearly, that the board needed to keep into the policy venue rather than the operations venue. I don't think that was that doubt. And, but while I say that, in the very short period of time that I've been dealing with this board, there's no doubt that you are focusing on policy and not on operations, and that is very much appreciated. But yes, I think your observation is a good one.
Okay, any further questions on 5.1? Councillor Beatty, or Member Beatty?
Maybe if I can help this report, because I think I had a lot to do with its present format. You really have to look at all 4 quarters and then look at the annual at the end, and you'll get the flow. And I look here for Fort Erie and I see that it's probably half of it is NEC, and I think that's just an anomaly. But you really do have to look at all 4 quarters and look at the final. And I think they're all available. All you have to do is ask for them. But as you get into it, you'll see the flows back and forth, and you'll note that Hamilton gets the least and pays the most. Thank you.
That's good. I don't know, it just means Hamilton doesn't put in a lot of applications. All these are is applications for planning, building permits, and NPCA. No, I'm just saying. So it's just volume, sheer volume, and sheer volume within watershed, so. No, that's all right. Well taken. Well taken. So, any more questions of 5.1? So seeing none, we'll move these in block. So 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that's it. We have a mover and a seconder, which is Councillor Height and Member Height and Member Foster. No further questions. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
All right, so on to item 6, business for consideration. Standing committee reports, minutes of the CAO selection committee meeting dated March the 20th, 2019. I have a, pardon? Oh, all 3 of them. Or all 3 of them, okay. Motion moved by Member Steele, seconded by Member Foster, that the following committee reports be adopted and any recommendations therein approved. Minutes of the CAO Selection Committee meeting dated March the 20th, 2019. Minutes of the CAO Selection Committee closed session meeting dated March 20th, 2019, to be made public. And minutes of the Audit and Budget Committee April 15th, 2019, as tabled. All those in favor? Member Shurton?
Well, with the other members of the public here, can we get an update where we are as far as timelines or what our selection process is? Has it closed? Where are we at? Or if we can get an update
Specific to the CAO?
specific to the CEO.
Did you want to?
Madam Chair, I am not involved in that process. The clerk does sit in on those meetings. If there are board members, excellent.
Yeah, Member Steele.
Thank you, Madam Chair, as I do chair this committee. So we've chosen our firm to go out and do the headhunting. They've started that. We had a meeting last Friday with the committee. We went over a number of questions that he had for us. And we had the clerk with us, so there would be a number of reports and lots of information that goes to him so he can formulate everything that he's going out to. He described his process of all the periodicals and online employment listings that you would go out to as municipal governments do, conservation authorities and things like that. So in essence, we have a few weeks that he'll come back to us as he goes out with that, and then and as the search goes. I'm not sure if it's listed, if he's listed it yet online, or is he just waiting for a little bit more information? Yeah, well, no, I'm just saying, everything he's asked for, we're either have given to him or in the process. Everything's been done. Okay, so that came out of that meeting. So that's really where we are. So he's really formulating everything as we're going out.
So just to follow up on that, with some of his guidelines, are they coming back potentially with 3 candidates, 5 candidates, the best candidate, or like what direction was this company given?
So in answer to that, really that'll be up to the committee as far as who that, he may come back and say, hey, I got 5 really good people. So the committee may interview those 5 and whittle it down, and then the full board authority would probably bring it down to 2 or 3 that the full board authority would give presentations to. I don't think we all want to sit here through the whole amount, but if indeed it was 5 or 6, we would whittle that down to 2 or 3 and then bring it to the full board authority for them to see those candidates, get the presentations, and then make a decision from there. So, yeah.
Great, thanks for that update.
Yeah, no problem.
Does anyone else have any other comment? Member Encina?
Through you, Madam Chair. I am just trying to find, someone can direct me, where it was that the governance committee was going to reach back and submit a report with regards to the request made by the Niagara region.
So that's an item separate from what we're moving at the moment. We're going to consider that next.
Thank you.
Member Steele?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment, and I'd like to thank our clerk for this. Under item 612, minutes of the CAO Selection Committee closed session, that hasn't been something that's come to this board, I don't think at all in the past, where he's bringing the minutes of the in-camera meetings forward. Some may remain as in-camera items and not for public purview. This one will be made public, that came out of our sessions. So I'd like to thank the clerk for doing this because, again, open and transparency. So this had nothing to do with the previous boards or anything like that. It's just was internally the way they did it. So that is a change, and I think it's a good change for this board. So I'd like to thank Grant for that.
Any further comments, questions? No? Okay, again, it's just 6.11, 6.12, 6.14. So at this point, I'll ask all those in favor. Any opposed? And that's carried. On to 6.13, minutes of the Governance Committee meeting. I have a motion moved by Member Steele, seconded by Member Foster, that the Governance Committee meeting report and minutes dated March the 27th be adopted and any recommendations therein be approved, save and accept recommendation number GC-13-2019 to be withdrawn and voted on separately. I imagine we have discussion on this one. Member Encina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regards to the Niagara region, and I believe through the report by Justice Ramsey, it was decided through him and through the region that it was felt that the composition of this board be made up of 12 people for now. Pending a review as we go forward, I would like to make a suggestion, a motion that we in fact reflect that, report back to send a message to the Niagara region saying, yes, the composition of this board should remain 12 from the Niagara region until a governance review is completed or done. At such time, it can be revisited. But for now, that we move forward and we say the composition is as of what we have right now. So I would suggest that that be amended if we're going to send anything back, just for the sake that Niagara Region has asked for it. Right now, let's supply that to them. Status quo, should things change later, it can be revisited.
Member Johnson?
Yeah, thank you. I'm really struggling with this because I believe at the beginning of this term, and I wasn't here for that meeting, but I read the minutes, or not the minutes, sorry, I was hearing from all the members, that it was agreed at the time that everyone was going to stay away from this conversation. Minister had ordered the 3 municipalities to duke it out. They decided to wait until the review was finished of the tax levy, and then they would duke it out. So it's above our pay grade at this point in time at this level to even comment on this other than to abide by what the minister had ordered the municipalities to do. I understand that it's very frustrating for those that are here temporarily. So I would humbly suggest you go back to your municipalities and say, instead of this 3-month, 6-month stuff, could you please just leave us here until such time the 3 municipalities finish duking it out? And that way, there's a little bit of consistency at the table. If there are municipalities that have already appointed someone to take your place, then I would respectfully say, let that person take your place. And then the rest, at the end of it, the municipalities may come up with something totally different than what we're looking around the table right now. And I think we need to respect that process. So I think the message going back is, this governance report is great. I don't see anything wrong with it whatsoever because it's following through on what we all agreed on in the very first meeting, is that we're going to let the 3 municipalities duke it out. And they've agreed to duke it out when the review is finished. So there's a process in place. Let's respect the process. I think it's above our jurisdiction. I really believe it's above our jurisdiction to tell people who we want at this table. That's not up to us. It's up to the Act, and it's up to the 3 municipalities to agree. Those are my thoughts, and I think that the governance report is fine, and I think it should be left alone.
Member Steele?
I mean, I do agree with most of the members' comments, but the unfortunate part about it is now we're drawn into another court case. I think going forward, we have to come out of this meeting with a number, and as Member Encina said, it's traditionally been 12 for quite a while now. I know it's fluctuated over years, but we came into this with 12 because it was 12. I think we need to send a message that the status quo stay, with the caveats that Member Johnson said. I have no issue with that. but I think we need to give the court something coming out of here that can go back to the region. They can comment on it, that it's been 12, it stays at 12 for now until all these other issues get resolved. But to say nothing going into court, I don't think bodes well for this organization. I know there's other comments, but interim, we believe it should be 12. And I believe most of the Niagara members believe that, because that's what it has been. So I think we should come out with something. So if you really take section 5.4 out of the report, defeat that section, add in that we recommend that the 12 stay on. And we do have a motion on that. We brought it forward. Well, it's not at the table yet, but we did bring one to the table. If we can bring that up. But I mean, I have a real reservation on not saying anything because of this court issue. The unfortunate part about it is we're drawn into another court issue for what reason I don't know, but we have the 12 here. I just think we need to make a statement that this board is working, and it's working very well with the numbers that were here the last 4 years from the previous term of councils, the 3 councils, or 3 municipalities, and that it's, until changed, it will work fine. That's where I'm coming at with this. So that's my thought on that, is that we don't accept 5.4, and then we put in there that we actually have a motion being brought forward. I mean, if you want to hear it first, I have no issue by putting that on the floor so you can at least hear it.
Member Johnson.
My biggest concern right now is that if we put in any opinion whatsoever, it might predetermine the decision later on down the road. We have a mandate from the City of Hamilton, from our legal team, and their interpretation. There was a lawyer that came to the past board from the NPCA that also had the same legal interpretation. If we vote today to maintain the 12, then I'm basically going against what our board of directors at the City of Hamilton have voted on. So I would very respectfully suggest that we don't weigh in. It's not up to us to make up this board membership. The minister made the orders. It goes to the municipalities. Regardless how this court order comes out, it's still my understanding that if the 3 municipalities sit down to duke it out, they could override this court decision. I could be wrong, but I'm saying right now is that the act says the 3 municipalities must agree. So that's my problem right now, is I don't want to put another number on the table that will screw up things at the end of the day. It may end up being 12, 4, and 2. It may. But I don't want to predetermine that. And again, it's not within our jurisdiction to determine it at all. It's up to the 3 municipalities, and we have to abide by what our municipality are suggesting right now. You guys will probably win if you put it to a vote right now because we're outnumbered. But bottom line is, Haldeman and Hamilton have already put their position forward, and I'm not going to speak for Haldeman, but I do recall the correspondence that has been coming in, that we have kept it as this is what we believe our membership should be, but we're going to let the courts and the process determine it at a later date. I think that as board members, we should not be weighing in on this at all.
I'm just going to defer to Ms. Woods for a moment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I delicately walk into this issue because I have certainly learned over the last number of days how sensitive an issue this is, and I want to be sensitive to everybody on this. I just simply want to paint the picture to where we're at right now so that, that we all know. And I'll give you my perspective. I do believe that the current appointees from the region of Niagara are appointed until, is it the end of June? The end of June. And in the interim, as I had indicated, I circulated to you a statement where a Better Niagara has asked that the issue be referred back to the courts. We were not represented by a lawyer during that last discussion, is my understanding. I don't believe that that is a good position for this authority to be in. So I'm waiting for some instructions from you. We need to get back on that court case as to whether we're going to have a respondent or not. That would be our lawyer. The lawyer can just go and attend the hearing, or we can make a statement, whatever. I won't weigh in on numbers. I just also wanted to just advise the board, there are 3 mechanisms, to my understanding, of how the board can determine your numbers. One is a ministerial order. The ministerial order, in my opinion, is a very, very long process. You need to go up to the minister needs to weigh in on it, and I think the minister, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, could be a little reluctant to weigh in on this. The second is a court order, so we can wait and see what happens as a result of a Better Niagara taking this issue to court, and we don't know what number the judge might land on. All our lawyer has said to us is if we have a preference, it would be good to weigh in at the court, in front of the court. And I'm not saying what my number is, because I know that's folly to this group. That's all I'm reporting, is what our lawyer has said. The third way that, and I am extremely used to this process, I've determined board numbers where I'm quite accustomed to working with, it's the actual board that provides the recommendations to the municipalities. In Niagara, Hamilton, and Holden, you're working from a separate process where the regional chair has sat down with the head of Hamilton and with the head of Haldeman and tried to work through numbers. I am extremely used to working with 2 boards where the board actually sits down and determines their numbers. I know for this board that seems to be at issue. The issue that I simply raised in front of the governance committee is I agree with Member Johnson. We could be looking at a very different board complex when the provincial government review comes down, or there's been some court order. My only and main concern is that staff need a board to work with in June forward. That's my main concern. So whatever those numbers are, whatever Niagara Region lands on, they've asked us for advice. The governance committee made it clear to me that they didn't really want to give a lot of advice. My feeling is different, but I'm the CAO. I can only make recommendations. I can't choose. But at least the governance committee suggested that we can provide Niagara Region with a list of competencies. And we're certainly prepared to do that. And then we just need a board of directors, somebody from June forward, to give staff the guidance that we need to move forward.
There's a list now. I just want to weigh in. When we're sitting at this table, we're first and foremost members of this committee. And I think we really need to view this issue from that lens. So I think it's reasonable for us to provide leadership and guidance to our member municipalities in terms of what's best for this board. And I would agree with Gail that, recommending a list of competencies is something that a responsible board would undergo. And knowing how sensitive this can be, I think it's reasonable to provide it as guidance where there may be an absence of an established process. So if a municipality does not have a process in place, they have the option of using something we have determined that would be helpful in determining the members who are sitting at this table. So I'm going to concur with Gail on that, but I do have a list, so I'm going to go on to Member Beattie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. any way we handle this at this table is going to be divisive. Because if I'm reading it correctly from the discussions I've had, and I'm going to ask, is there a motion on the floor, first of all? Is there a motion on the floor, seconded?
The motion at present that's on the floor is to approve the governance committee meeting minutes, save and accept the contentious motion that you folks are discussing.
Okay.
I think procedurally, the proper way is to vote on this, to receive those governance
Yes.
meeting minutes, save and accept the contentious item, then bring forward the contentious item. If you decide that, as it appeared in the minutes, if you decide that that's not the way you want to continue to proceed, you need to defeat that motion. And then there is a subsequent motion that was, I think the wording was prepared by our CAO and circulated electronically to you folks, and that has been moved and seconded as well as an alternate course of action. If there's another course decides upon, we'll have that action at this point.
So would you mind if you
So let's.
move forward on
If nobody has an objection, I will move that motion to get it on the
Okay.
floor. It's already moved and seconded? Okay, so that's the motion on the floor? Okay, have we voted on it?
No, we have not.
Okay, because we had another motion down at the end. That's a separate motion
Yes,
calling for number 12, so that's a motion on a motion or is it an amendment to the motion?
there's nothing. We're just discussion right now. So,
Okay, so I'll defer
question.
talking and I'll call the question and let's get this on the floor.
Okay,
And we can
so
deal with, we can deal with the numbers.
thank you, Member Beatty. All those in favor? Any opposed? Right, except 5.4. Okay.
Okay.
On to motion 5.4, moved by Member Steele, seconded by Member Foster. I think we all know what we're talking about. Would you like to continue, Member Beatty?
I'm going to I'll make my comments and then I'll give some of the opportunity. This is going to divide us. If I read this correctly, Niagara, for their good reasons, want 12. I would say the only number 12, and I've heard the thing of we can have 27, so we're only taking 12. I've heard that comment. I don't know if it's legally correct, but I haven't seen anything to justify it's legally correct. Hamilton has a position of 542, and that is my council's position, and it's based on Hamilton's interpretation of the Act, because if you can't get an agreement, you got to go to the Act. So we're sitting here, and Member Johnson has pointed out, we're sitting here waiting for the three municipalities to hopefully come to an agreement. Otherwise, it goes to the Act. And if it goes to the Act, I know Niagara's going to argue the 27 notion. We're going to argue the 542, and I think Haldeman agrees with our 542. So if we go ahead and vote on the 12 for Niagara, I think and show that as direction for your region, I think that's going to divide the board. It's just going to chop it along the municipalities, so why do that? I think right now we seem to be getting along. I wouldn't want to disrupt, and given the fact that you could change in June, we could have how many new members in June from Niagara? It's all in a state of flux. Your membership's in a state of flux. Who's going to represent Niagara? The numerical composition of the board is in flux because, and I say this with all due respect, Hamilton has a legal opinion, Haldeman has a legal opinion. I haven't seen Niagara's legal opinion. I know the group is taking it to court to try to get an illegal opinion from a judge. There's so many variables out there that the only thing we can do is argue, because ultimately we'll ask for a recorded vote if it's 12, and I'm pretty sure that it's going to be 12-5, and it's going to be a recorded vote, and what does that accomplish? Unless you want to go back to them and say, the Niagara representatives of this body endorse 12, 4-2 or 12-2-1, which is the original, and the Hamilton-Haldeman members of the board support 5-4-2. And that would be a fair assessment of the position of this board as it, unfortunately, as it breaks up into two groups. And I don't see how I tend to support Member Johnson's position that let's wait, let's see what happens. Thank you.
I just want to clarify. I think there's actually three issues. There's the potential for an extension. There's the composition, which I think I'm hearing people want to stay away from.
Yes.
And there's the skills or competency recommendation. So there are.
So can we extract the three and maybe
We
vote
could even
on-
vote separately.
vote separately on the three? Because I don't think there's a contentious issue with two of them.
Right. Okay. But I will. Did you want to comment before?
No, Madam Chair, I just, in order to get my thoughts understood as we move towards June, can I just ask, and pardon me if this is a very ignorant question, but if Niagara Region we don't comment on it, but if Niagara Region extends the appointments of the existing 12 members that sit around the table, if they do that, is it my understanding that Hamilton and Haldeman will not accept that? No, we need to be really clear on this because Niagara Region, and I have their letter here, they have asked the board, you, to request the extension of the current board members here. I just need to, we have a couple of options. You can either say what the governance committee said, which is we're not going to comment. Or we can comment on it, number two. And if we don't comment on it, I'm just trying to understand if Niagara Region does appoint 12 people, is that contentious at this board at this time?
So I actually have a speaker list that I need to go back to. So Member Height and then Member Johnson.
The CAO's brought up a letter requesting an extension for another 6 months. Who did it come from? I don't recall us dealing with this at the board, at the region, that we asked to extend us for another 6 months on top of what we've already done. You're shaking your head. I'm looking to the CAO. To June, not beyond June. And we're hearing it's another 6 months after June. That's news to me.
Madam Chair, the Board of Directors received a letter from the Region of Niagara dated March 1st. You dealt with that letter at your March 20th meeting, and you forwarded it to the Governance Committee for consideration. I believe that the region is asking you to comment on further extension of the 12 board members. Your terms end in June. They're also asking us to comment on composition. My interpretation of composition is not numbers. My interpretation of composition is citizen appointees versus elected appointees. That's my interpretation, not numbers. And the third thing that they're asking you for is, would you provide them with advice? They've specifically asked for a skills matrix.
I'm not arguing.
Okay.
I'm arguing the fact that you suggested that there was another 6 month extension.
No.
And that's new. Okay.
No.
Okay. So that's number one. There is no another 6 month extension. Number two, some of us were in favor of 12-2-1. Some of us might be in favor of 27-4-2. To Councillor or to Member Beatty's comment, some of us brought up that number 27 because that's a number that I believe is a valid number depending on what information you review, determining the factors. Okay, how many members? 12-2-1 worked when I sat on this board. 12-2-1. 12-4-2 seems to work as well. I don't have a problem with what we're doing currently. I believe that in a number of weeks or months, the regional council would like to present their 12 members to this board until that changes, with people to sit on this board for a permanent time, if it's going to stay as 12-4-2, if it goes 12-2-1, if it goes whatever number. I believe that that's where we're going, and I don't believe it's the end of June, I believe it's the middle of June, because I believe we were appointed in early December, or mid-December, so I think if you're looking at 6 months, it's not to the end of June, but it's to the middle of June. The motion that I'm looking at in 5.4, we don't want to make comment on it, we should have a lawyer there. We aren't going to determine, we've sent it to the chair of the region, the mayor of Hamilton and of Halderman to deal with this and come forward, which they haven't come forward either. So we're in, okay, let's vote on it. Well, if Niagara has more votes here, as Member Beatty said, the vote will be 12-5, whatever the number, 12-4, 12 against 6? Not necessarily, but most probably we're going to ask to have more representation than the other two members because we put up more money, most of the money, not most of the money, but a large majority of the money. So it's only fair for us to have a majority around this group. But let's think about what's more important for the conservation. Forget the word Niagara. What's important for conservation? It's having good people here. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to have some kind of matrix so we have a good mix of people here. Not all politicians, not all members of the public, but a good mix so there are good decisions, because that's more important than the number. If the number around here was 6 and they were all great people, that's good for the conservation of Ontario. That's what we're here for, peninsula conservation. Forget Niagara word, because we're more than Niagara. Or the province of Ontario is going to change a rule and have fewer conservation authorities, fewer municipalities, and by the way, if I'll watch what I say, but things could change totally, that you might not be representing St. Catharines, Hamilton, or whatever. We're going to be representing a larger group, and our representative from Grimsby might be part of Hamilton. Who knows what's going to happen? So
Member Height.
I believe we should have someone there. I don't believe that we should have a specific stand unless you want to vote on it today. I'm prepared to vote on it, but it's senseless, I think. It's more important to have a representative from our group. And the last representation that was made by staff inferred that Councillor Height, Senzik, and Edgar were members of Better Niagara, which I can publicly say I'm not a member of the organization who is now taking us to court, even though one of our staff included me in their response, which I was somewhat taken back.
Member Height, let's bring it back. So just a reminder, we're not talking about the numbers Niagara has, but that was brought up in terms of composition. So is there a right proportion that should be citizen-based versus political? And I'll just suggest, if we look to Hamilton, it was 50-50. So maybe that's a potential guideline.
I'm happy with 50-50.
Okay.
From the region, and then let the councillors at the region wrestle out which community has a representative from council and which community has a representative from the public. I have no problem with that.
Okay,
I always get in trouble.
So I'm going to turn it over to Member Johnson, and then I have Member Shurton.
Actually, I'll defer to Member Shurton. He has not spoken to it yet, and I'll speak after him.
Well, my first comment is, being on the board the last term, one thing I can say is the member from St. Catharines seems to be a long-winded. Doesn't matter who's in that chair. So, but in saying moving forward here, I don't know why, if we want to provide some update, my suggestion is we basically say we've directed our 3 participating municipalities to come up with the numbers, and that's our position. To me, that's a simple position, and that can be our direction.
Member Encinon?
Oh,
Sorry. Member Johnson, did you want to go now?
thank you. Yes, because I was just deferring to the speaker who hasn't spoken yet. So just very quickly, my understanding, Gail, and please forgive me for using first names, it's so much easier for me. You're asking for, the concern that the staff have is that the extensions that keep going 3, 6 months, it's just not consistent enough, and your staff needs to have some consistency. I totally agree, and I said that in my opening statement, that we should at the very least say, go back to your municipalities stating, please keep us in line. We're prepared to work together until such time the municipalities come up with different numbers or the same, but at least keep us on for consistency purposes only, and no more of these 3, 6 months, 9 months extensions. It's too much of an influx for everyone, including all of us, not just staff. So if at the very least we can say, go back to and it's only the Niagara region, I believe, that's doing this extension stuff, because I believe Haldeman and Hamilton are set in stone right now. So if we can go back to the region of Niagara saying, okay, to respond to your suggestions and your question, we are asking that all membership stay as is until such time the 3 municipalities agree on the composition. Period. It could be 3 months, could be 3 years. It doesn't matter. It's when they decide. And that's what we're going to defer to, is their authorization. Citizens versus politics. I really have a hard time with that, because politicians are citizens too. And citizens can be politicians. And everyone has a different skill set. Some people have the same skill set. I really believe it's up to, and I would defer again to staff. What would you like to see on this board that would help you do your job and reach that mandate? And I think that's where the governance committee was coming from, was letting the staff set up, at least for us to approve, that's fine too, but you set up your wish list, who you would like. And does it have to be a politician? Does it have to be a citizen? It could be somebody who is all of the above. So that's my other suggestion for you. So at the very least, if we have to weigh in on this, it would be, we are prepared to work together until such time the 3 municipalities let the process work. They want to wait for this tax levy to be done and over and said, let's bury it, put a big bow on it, and then they can agree on the composition. We abide by it regardless. And my understanding is, yes, you said ministerial order, then it becomes a court order. But my understanding is, if the 3 municipalities agree to one formula, no matter what, they send it up to the minister then can override everything. So he can say, yep, the 3 municipalities have agreed, so this is what we're going to do. So again, it's not up to us to make up that composition, but we can say we're prepared to work together until such time the composition is set in stone by the 3 municipalities' agreement. I'm prepared for that. I'm also prepared to set the staff, give us your wish list, who you want on here, skill set wise. If there's a politician with that skill set, it doesn't matter. If they have the skill set, that's what matters. If the citizen has better skill sets, they should be here. That's up to your municipalities to agree. So those are my comments, and I hope we can wrap this up in a bow and send it away so we can get back to work.
All right, Member Encina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I feel like a rose between 2 thorns right now. No, I'm sorry.
No, I like the thorns. I'm just wondering how you got to be a rose.
He's no rose. He's no rose.
Or you can be interpreted, I'm the smelly one then, right? In any event, I do agree we need to have something sent back. That we can't, to sit back and say nothing would be irresponsible on our part. I do agree, status quo, things are working well, let it go. With regards to the changes, 3 municipalities have put forward people's names that they would like to see. One being my position. I don't have a problem yielding that because I know the people that are coming in are well versed and have the best interest at heart for this board and for the NPCA to survive and to prosper. But I do believe that we do need to send a reply. To say nothing is wrong. And I do agree, let things hash out at the top if we have to do that. And let staff and yourself know that things need to continue until such time as it's hashed out at the end. And that's all for this rose.
Thank you, Member Encina. Member Foster? Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick comment to Member Johnson and others. I think all of us from Niagara came onto this board not particularly concerned about whether we were going to be here 3 months or 6 months or 18 years. The reality is that we're here to try and resolve a whole bunch of problems, and that's what we have been doing. And in fact, I can say without a shadow of a doubt, I'm totally up to my ears in what's going on with the NPCA now, with governance committee, with the audit committee the other day. I'm dealing with these board meetings. I'm, trying to balance off our crazy schedule at the region as well while we're doing this. So just, we're legitimate going on with this. And if I'm not a member of this committee come, the middle of June, that's fine. I don't think any of us are sitting around worried about that. I think what we really want to do is make sure all of this is on the right footing and moving forward completely. And so I do appreciate your comments on that, but let's just remember, we're here to also get a job done, which was originally mandated for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Foster. Member Kiokio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can tell you that my blood pressure is a lot lower than it was when I started this committee, this board. I was going to save my comments for the end, but however, I will state it now because I really like the direction that this board is going, opposed to when I first started. And I think we're making great strides. And I'm glad to see Ms. Wood here as our interim CEO because I think she's done a lot. And I particularly like to see the staff that are sitting there that are able now to answer our questions. So we're going in the right direction. I think Member Johnson is right. We should let the people at the top hash out the numbers. But in the meantime, I know that when we talk about municipalities I think there's 3 right now that are ready to for people to step in that are very qualified to be here. And one of the municipalities is the city of Welland. I'm ready to step aside. Like I said, the person that is coming here has the experience, is more knowledgeable than myself in conservation. I think same with some of the other municipalities. And I think we're ready to step aside and let this board talk about conservation and work on conservation. So that's the direction I like to see. And just kudos to everybody around the table and the staff and our chair and Ms. Wood for the wonderful work that has been done to this point. Like I said, my blood pressure is a lot lower than it is when it started.
Member Shurton.
Just to be clear, because I can totally appreciate our CEO want to know how this board is going to look as far as who's here and who's not here for staff purposes after June. But I'm hearing different numbers. So I guess you guys have already got people in place. So who around this board here can mention that you're planning on staying or you've been reappointed by somebody else from your municipality?
I can speak to that. So there are 3 municipalities within Niagara that have citizen appointments, which include St. Catharines, Welland, and Fort Erie. So part of what we could be and Grimsby.
We haven't officially put it, but I'm in a position where I'm not going to be here for the whole 4 years. Sorry, I'm in a position that I won't be here full time. So we have a person, but because we were waiting for the skill set, we didn't move forward on it from the municipality of Grimsby right now. So we can, depending on when. I'm here till June, but I think we will move forward as a municipality. Thank you.
So if we are recommending that there aren't, short-term numbers or, durations placed on the Niagara board, then I think what I'm hearing is that the citizen appointments should move into their rightful place on the board. And maybe we could include that. I don't know if it's an amendment at this point or if we need to defeat. Okay.
Start fresh, I think.
Okay, it sounds like we need to start fresh. Member Steele.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can we not dissect 1, 2, 3, and 4? Because some of those like item 1, we can receive. There's nothing wrong with accepting that.
Well, why don't we vote on them all separately since they are all separate and distinct? Does that sound fair? Okay, well, I'll start with the motion we have, which it sounds like we're going to have a new motion. So as is, moved by Member Steele, seconded by Member Foster, recommendation number GC-13-2019. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that's defeated. Okay, so we're waiting on a new motion?
Well,
Do you want to read it?
Well, I've got one here, but I think I do want to have it changed slightly based
Okay.
on conversation. But if I can bring in number 1 first, that the report GC-0419 respecting the correspondence of the Niagara Region dated March representation be received. So we can receive the report.
Okay,
Still make changes.
I've got a motion for that. Moved by
That'll be last, after our changes? You want to do that last?
You can receive the report into the record regardless at any point.
Okay, so let's get that off, if we can get that off the
So
table.
moved by Member Steele, seconded by Member Foster, that report number GC-4-19 respecting the correspondence from Niagara Region dated March 1st, 2019 regarding Niagara Region representation on the NPCA be received. All those in favor?
Yes, we'll receive that.
Any opposed? Carried.
Okay, so I do have a motion, which I'm going to amend. Rob's okay with me amending it while we're here. Okay, so, but Rob originally said, so, but I'd like us to formulate some of this as we're sitting here, because I'm going to go so far and then read what we have, but I want to reformulate some of this. So whereas the Region of Niagara requested the NPCA in their March 1st, 2019 letter for comments regarding NPCA board composition and qualifications, and whereas the Auditor General of Ontario provided recommendations regarding board skills, experience, and training in her September 14th, 2018 report on the NPCA, and whereas the Province of Ontario is currently reviewing regional governments which could impact the future board of the NPCA, and whereas the City of Hamilton appeal regarding the NPCA levy is under review. Therefore, be it resolved that the Region of Niagara appoint 12 members to the NPCA until the City of Hamilton's appeal regarding the NPCA levy is complete, and that the that the Chair of the Region of Niagara, the Mayor of the City of Hamilton, and the Mayor of the City of Haldimand have reached an agreement with final composition be forwarded to the board with those memberships. So that goes out.
Can I just say, I think
And that's where I would leave it. So that until those are done, we can say the 12 that are originally here, stay here until those things are completed. So if the Hamilton issue is done in 2 months, 3 heads of council come to an agreement in the next 2 or so months, 3 months, whatever it may be, no matter what the number of months are, that's when then the full composition will come. But in the interim, we just say that the 12 that are here, I'll say 12 seats, not necessarily the actual people,
Okay.
continue until these things are complete.
Okay.
So, so I've got that. And that's what I had, appoint 12 members. So whether Niagara wants to appoint the 3 citizens or 4 citizens with Jeff's stuff, so it doesn't say who the members are.
I think Member
So further,
Johnson has a comment.
No, but I'm just going to go further that the NPCA recommend a list of competencies modeled from the Alberta Public Agencies Matrix to the Region of Niagara in order that the region can forward the competencies to municipalities regarding whether they wish to recommend to the region to appoint an elected or citizen appointee. It says here after January 2020, but I think we can just end it at that because they may want to use them right away if this stuff changes. And I'll leave the last one off for now because I don't think it applies today. So that's really where I'm going with this. I'm just trying to set a number so that going forward until all these issues are complete, we know our numbers. It's not etched in stone. We're not saying It has to be 12, 4, 2, but until those, the one court case with Hamilton and the 3 heads of council come to an agreement, which will be sent back to this board with what's going on going forward from there, at least we can move forward with this group and get things done. That's really where I'm going with this. So it doesn't set in stone that it's 12. It's not. It's really what you said, Brenda, as far as we're waiting for all this stuff to come. So I'm just trying to bring in what you were saying, because I do agree with some of the stuff you said. So anyways, I'll end
Member
at that.
Johnson?
Love to see this written down. That would be really helpful because, and I also believe that there should be some more whereases in there. So that was what I was going to comment on as well. So it really comes down to why we're deciding. But also one of the therefores should be resolved that the staff of the NPCA provide the board with a wish list of the skill set that they would like to see. So if we could get this in writing, if you don't mind, and I'm prepared to actually table this part, let's get on with the rest of the agenda. I would just love to wordsmith some of this a little bit so that we're all in agreement instead of trying to do this on the fly. So is there any way, Gail, we can have this printed off?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. What I would recommend is if we could take that resolution and through our staff at Balls Falls, Adam, if we could type that into a computer here at Balls Falls and get it distributed for the board members. In the meantime, we could, if you, could table it until such time as you see this in front of you and move on with the agenda.
I'd like to table it at this point in time until we get the wordsmithing sorted out, and then if people want to tweak it after that, at least we have it in front of our faces. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh.
We would require a mover and seconder on that.
Member Sherton, Member Metcalf. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that's tabled. Perhaps we could grab a coffee. Do you want to grab a coffee?
Agenda and then have lunch.
Members, can I have your attention, please? We're going to take a short break just to get things together here. So if you want to grab a coffee or a water and then come back, please. Everyone's back in their seats. Okay, so back to the motion, which you all should now have printed and put in front of you. I'll give you a moment to read it, unless you want, do you want me to read it? We'll let them read it. Doesn't matter? Okay, and then we'll... Okay, is there any single line item that you would want voted on separately? Member Johnson?
I'm sorry, I thought we were going to table this and get through the rest of the agenda so we'd have time, because this is the one, the very first therefore is the one that I really wanted to tweak a little bit more.
Okay, we can...
Because I don't like it.
We'll do that.
Okay, so
Noted,
can we
and-
just table this and get through the rest of the agenda?
Yes.
And then again, I thought this is what we were doing to wordsmith it. Yep. And again, this is on the fly. I don't want to do that.
Move on to 6.2.1. So motion moved by Member Height, seconded by Member Foster, that report number FA-47-19 respecting appointment, reappointment of NPCA compliance regulation officers be received, and that the board appoint, reappoint the following NPCA staff enforcing Section 29 of the Act as regulation officers pursuant to Section 30.1 of the Conservation Authorities Act, RSO 1990, Chapter C.27 for the term of their employment with the NPCA. I'm going to pronounce some of these wrong. Michael Boyko, Adam Christie, Nathaniel Devos, Jeffrey Fazakas, Kim Froelich, Michael Germain, Robert Hayslip, Robert Currit, Michael McIntyre, Roberto Parasotti, Robert Schultz, Mariah Tempest, that the board appoint, reappoint the following NPCA staff enforcing Section 28 of the Act and Ontario Regulations 15506, or as amended, as regulation officers pursuant to Section 30.1 of the Conservation Authorities Act, RSO 1990, Chapter C.27 for the term of their employment with the NPCA, David DeLuce, Daniel Drennan, Darren McKenzie. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. 6.2? 6.22, the motion moved by Member Foster, seconded by Member Shurton, that report number FA-48-19 respecting NPCA administrative bylaw proposed change to Section 4, subsection 4.5, chair and vice chair appointments to standing committees be received, and that the Board of Directors approve a change to Section 4, subsection 4.5 of the NPCA administrative bylaw to appoint the chair and vice chair as ex officio non-voting members to authority standing committees, that Section 4, subsection 4.5 of the administrative bylaw be changed to reflect that standing committees will have a minimum of 3 members, with the chair and vice chair being ex officio non-voting members. I just want to comment on this because I brought this forward. My concern was, one, there is a workload component of this, but two, the chair and the vice chair being automatic members on every single committee we have, I believe allows for a level of undue influence on our decision-making process. And second to that, it's an opportunity to claim per diem on 8+ meetings a month, which I think gives a financial incentive for a chair or vice chair appointment. So this change allows trust to be in the committee to make the decision, but also for the chair and the vice chair to participate when they want, but not to do so for a financial incentive. So I'm very much in favor of this. Member Shurton?
Just a question on that, like, what are the numbers if the chair and vice chair are there? Do we have like 3 or 4 members in each? I couldn't remember what was the total now. My only concern with that, I totally understand, and I think it's a great initiative that you brought this forward, but I don't want just 2 members or 3 members being on this board making the decision now of these subcommittees.
The
So what's the number?
clarification is a minimum of 3 members, but my understanding is that additional members can join committees if so desired.
Okay, thanks for that.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. 6.2.3, an update on memorandums of understanding with watershed municipalities, moved by Member Shurton, seconded by Member Foster, that report number FA-49-19, respecting an update on the memorandums of understanding with watershed municipalities, be received for information. Any conversation on this? Questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. 6.2.4, revitalizing the NPCA restoration program. Motion by Member Height, seconded by Member Shurton, that report number FA-37-19 regarding revitalizing the NPCA restoration program be received, that the proposed restoration program be approved for implementation as outlined in report number FA-37-19. Member Wright.
I had a few comments and questions, I guess. Under the purpose, the 4th bullet, that had been deferred from the last point. I think there was quite a bit of discussion. It seems like it's being just rolled in with this one. It'd be nice to get a separate vote on the authorization for the funding for the lakefront owners. A few other things too I had. On the page, I guess it's 159. So it goes through the strategic plan. Considering the last administration, I'm not sure if I want to go along with their strategic plan as my input for the restoration going forward. I'm also looking at this, and I don't see anywhere when the last restoration committee went, a restoration program, and the documentation went to the board, the board got the whole package. For instance, the forms, the decision matrix, and their weighting of the criteria. I don't see any of that here, not even as backup, and that concerns me considering the detail that we've been going into for some of the other ones. And I would like to submit a motion to actually send direction back to the staff to actually bring back to the board the actual decision-making process and the criteria. For instance, it talks about rebuild the canopy for 1 million trees. If you look at the direction of the science actually talks about for watershed management as a whole, an integrated approach. 1 million canopies for trees doesn't cut that in my terms. I know the Auditor General had made a mention of the trees, but just trees alone, I don't agree with that. I like the idea of the watershed planning and management cycle. That's item number 5 on 159. And I think that needs to be emphasized further. Watershed plans and sub-watershed plans are an excellent way of identifying where you can improve water quality. And and that needs to be emphasized more, actually, and I would prefer. NPCA actually did analysis of their watershed plans back in 2016, and I will say I was part of that. It was volunteered that I had to run it. But one of the points of that was it came out of it analyzed the watershed plans that we have and looked at the deficiencies and basically looked at a way of going forward, the best way of going forward for water quality improvement, for an integrated approach. It was done by a consultant, and I would like to see actually that added as one of the mechanisms for the decision-making and the criteria, actually, because I think that would help a long way. Another thing I don't see anywhere in here is one of the key things for making sure a restoration project works is the buy-in by the homeowner and the landowner, and that would used to be one of the criteria, and that's not, I don't see that anywhere here, and that's really important when it comes to things like watering of the trees in the future so they don't die after a year, things like that. So I'd like to see quite a bit more. So I'd like to provide direction to staff to come back with the full decision matrix on and the criteria, like it has been provided in the past to the board. Oh, one last thing as well. There's no mention here, for instance, it's 500,000. There's no mention of how that's going to be spent across the watershed. And we've just had a really rough discussion, but it could all be spent in Niagara-on-the-Lake, for instance. There's no discussion here on how that's going to be allocated or you know, if there should be criteria to actually give a broader approach. And I'd like to see something like that in there. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Member Wright is quite correct. If I can just very briefly address a few of his points. I just remind the board that what we are just asking for at this point in time is your blessing to reapprove the restoration program, because in essence this board canceled it in January. We're saying we need this program back. So this is a high-level request of the Board of Directors to permit staff to get involved in the restoration program again. And then, Member Wright, you're absolutely correct. When we get your direction to become re-involved, if you will, in the restoration program, then we will plan all of the details, the criteria, the rankings, who you might want for a committee to review some of these things. I was the one who directed staff to keep it at a very high level at this point in time and not go into a lot of details in the board until the board actually gave us the blessing to move forward. The second point, and we would be very happy to bring those details back to you. The second point on the strategic plan, nobody agrees with you more than I do. And I have brought to the attention of the chair and vice chair that your existing strategic plan, and it's the only one that you've got right now, was approved by the former board of directors. And there are, in my humble opinion, there are concerns about the 1 million trees and the 3 million native shrubs because they're not pegged into an overall target that is driven by a watershed plan. So you're absolutely correct on that. And the staff recognize that as well. And so I want to assure you that even though our strategic plan talks about restoration and revitalization and conservation, the staff are very conscious of the fact that we need to peg this into targets that will give us demonstrated movements forward in restoration, bring that back to the board of directors, and we can move forward from there. So absolutely agree with the member. We'd just like a little bit your approval to move forward, then we can bring this back to you with details.
Through you, Chair. Thank you very much, CL.
Any other comments or questions? None? Where are we? Here. Okay. Did I already read this out? All right. All those in favor? Any opposed? And okay, that's carried. oil and water. Do we want to deal with this prior to the enclosed? Oh, okay. We're going to save it for the end. So at this point, there is a motion for the in-camera? Okay. All right, at this point, we have a motion to move in camera, moved by Member Sherton, seconded by Member Wright, that the meeting of the Board of Directors of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority convene in closed session at 12:16 p.m. in accordance with Section 11.1 of the NPCA Administrative Bylaw for the discussion of matters relating to personnel matters about an identifiable individuals, including NPCA employees, organizational review, and labor relations, human resources, or employee negotiations Q1 legal update. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Carried. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? We're going to go back to 6.1.3 to address the motion. Just wait for... Oh, new business. Can we wait? You want to do it now? Okay. Member Steele.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hate staff sitting behind me, not because I don't like them sitting behind me. When I'm listening to somebody talk, I want to see them. Absolutely. It's all right for them. Can we reconfigure this table for our next board meeting so that staff sits up there, either an angled, something better, so that we can put the podium in the middle and leave it without moving it during the meeting, because it doesn't go in front of everybody when it's down through the walkway there. I don't like this. I know some city councils do it. I don't know how they do it, but in Port Colborne, our staff sits ahead of us because our questions are to staff, not, I'm not talking to Rob or Stu. I'm talking to these guys. So if we can change that, that's all I
Duly
ask.
noted.
Thank you.
Any other business? Can you, the mic, turn the mic on, please?
I know, I should go to the podium. I just can't sit anymore. So anyways, 150 pages on our agenda for my budget is fine, but we are now going to have citizen appointees. We have citizen appointees on here. I'm going to recommend that we still deliver to the citizen appointees their agendas because they don't have the resources that we do with our office work
So-
for them to get their agendas.
The option was actually, it was emailed out, and Grant asked if anyone would like a printed copy to let him know, and Grant actually delivered them in person, so kudos to
way
Grant.
to go, Grant.
But please be aware you can request a printed copy, but the process is first and foremost to email it out.
Thank you very much for that. That was number one. Number two, Gail and I talked about the numbering system on the agenda. We'll stay tuned. I dropped my agenda again. It was not pretty.
Member Metcalf.
Just one quick item, why we have, staff here. Is there a whistleblower policy in effect so that nobody is coerced or pressured into these positions or, I wouldn't say positions, but into compromising situations where they're signing things they don't feel comfortable with? I think there needs to be a whistleblower outlet to protect staff such as John and Misty back here and Darren, so that if they see improprieties going on, they can report them around that person without prejudice,
Fear of
without
losing their job.
reprisal.
Yeah. So we can maybe turn that over to staff for a recommendation to bring forward at the next meeting. Any other business? No, okay. And if anyone wants to tell Chair Bylsma how wonderful this meeting was run, I welcome you to do so. Okay, further revisions, hopefully to the last agenda item. All right. I will say I'm impressed with how collaborative everyone was on this very delicate issue, so good job, everyone. Okay, are we putting it up here as well? We don't need to? Okay. Member Johnson.
So what I did was, and thank you very much, Member Steele, for putting this together because it was a great framework. So what I did was I added the last whereas to explain about the levy review, and I changed the very first therefore be it resolved. And I still have one more wordsmithing to do, so bear with me. Therefore, be it resolved that the NPCA request to the Niagara region that the 12 temporary members or the replacements terms be extended until such time the appeal by the City of Hamilton is complete and the agreement between the three municipalities is finalized. That's what I'm asking for. And I think that's what we're all asking for, is that
So
they be
that's two
extended.
conditions you've stipulated, right?
Sorry?
You've stipulated two conditions. So
The second one is untouched, so it's further that the NPCA board direct staff to recommend a list of competencies modeled from the, and the wording is still the same. So the one, sorry? Okay, so the one change I'm making is, therefore be it resolved that the NPCA request to the Niagara region that the 12 temporary members, brackets, or their replacements, brackets, terms be extended until
Terms.
such time the appeal.
terms,
because.
they're terms.
Well, you told me to put on the microphone.
So-
Until such time.
I
So
just
that's-
want to point out that if the appeal by the city of Hamilton is finalized, but the three municipalities haven't,
Then your
met.
term continues on
Okay.
until such time it is, so we're just following the wording of the whereases.
Okay.
That the levy is starting first, and then the finalization of the three be agreed upon. So
Okay.
that's all it is just carrying that wording through.
Member Steele.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I'm glad that Brenda had added this. I have no issue with it. I don't know if Rob doesn't have an issue. It's really to what we were talking about earlier. So I would accept it as amended and move on from there. So, or use this as our original motion.
Is
with a
there
little correction
any,
done.
is there any other discussion? So just, I didn't read this, but moved by Member Steele, seconded by Member Foster. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Brenda. Carried. All right. That was a major accomplishment. I'm really proud of us for that. What do we have left? Is there anything? There's a motion to adjourn, moved by Member Height, seconded by Member Wright, that the meeting of the Board of Directors of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority be hereby adjourned at 1:20 p.m. Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.